Chicago drowned beneath freezing rain the night a billionaire mafia boss discovered one of his employees Googling how to marry a mafia boss. 26-year-old Elena Whitmore thought it was a desperate joke. Minutes later, she was escorted to the top floor where Luca Devereaux waited. Sharp suit, cold eyes, tattooed hands. Instead of firing her, he offered something impossible, a 6-month contract marriage. In exchange, he would erase every debt haunting her family. All she had to do was become Mrs. Devereaux and survive the dangerous world that came with his name. If you want to see how a late-night Google search turned into a love story powerful enough to survive violence, secrets, and the darkness of Chicago's underworld, stay until the end. And please hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The security alert pinged across Luca Devereaux's phone at 2:47 a.m., while he sat alone in his penthouse office overlooking a rain-soaked Chicago skyline. Most men worth $9 billion slept through the night. Luca hadn't slept properly in 6 years. He glanced at the notification. Employee ID 4782. Level 3 clearance. Data analyst. 26 years old. Elena Whitmore. The surveillance software flagged her search query as high risk. How to marry a mafia boss. Luca leaned back in his leather chair and studied the screen. His security team monitored every device connected to Devereaux Global Holdings' corporate network. Standard protocol for a man whose legitimate tech empire concealed one of the most powerful crime syndicates in the Midwest. Employees occasionally stumbled onto dangerous information. Most got fired, some disappeared. But this was different. This wasn't corporate espionage or accidental discovery. This was a woman desperate enough to type the quiet part out loud at 2 in the morning. Luca tapped his phone. Bring her up. 30 minutes later, Elena Whitmore stood shivering inside the executive elevator, ascending toward the top floor of Devereaux Tower. Her damp coat dripped rainwater onto marble floors. Her hands shook. Security hadn't explained why she'd been pulled from her apartment in the middle of the night. They'd simply knocked on her door, showed her a company ID, and told her Mr. Devereaux requested her presence immediately. Elena knew exactly why. The search history. The stupid, exhausted, desperate search history she'd typed after staring at another pile of medical bills she couldn't pay. Her younger brother needed surgery. Her mother's house sat 3 weeks from foreclosure. Student loans buried her under interest she'd never escape. And somewhere between panic and sleep deprivation, Elena had typed those words into the search bar like a woman drowning might scream at the sky. She didn't expect the sky to answer. The elevator doors opened onto a vast office that looked more like a fortress than a workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Chicago glowing beneath sheets of rain. Dark furniture, minimal lighting, everything designed to intimidate. Behind a massive desk sat Luca Devereaux. Elena had seen him exactly twice before. Once during new employee orientation when he'd walked through the auditorium without acknowledging anyone. Once in the lobby when his security team swept through like he was the president. Both times she'd felt the same cold awareness everyone else did. This man was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with business. Up close, he looked worse. Sharp cheekbones. Dark eyes that never blinked. Black hair swept back from a face too handsome to trust. His suit probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months, tailored perfectly over a body built from violence, not gyms. Tattoos crawled up both hands beneath leather gloves he never removed in public. He studied her the way a scientist might study something unexpected under a microscope. Sit, Luca said. Elena sat. Her legs barely held her. Do you know why you're here? His voice carried no emotion, just cold, flat authority. Yes. No point lying. Say it, Elena swallowed. I searched for something stupid on my work laptop. How to marry a mafia boss. Luca quoted her exact search query without looking at any notes. Stupid is one word for it. It was a joke, her voice cracked. A bad joke after a bad night. Jokes require humor. That search triggered 17 security protocols designed to identify threats against my organization. He leaned forward slightly. So let me be clear, Miss Whitmore. I don't tolerate threats. I eliminate them. Elena's throat closed. I'm not a threat. I'm just broke. Silence. Then Luca did something she didn't expect. He smiled. Not warmly, more like a predator recognizing prey stupid enough to be honest. How broke? Excuse me? You heard me. How much debt are we talking about? Elena's brain struggled to process the question. Why does that matter? Because I'm deciding whether to fire you or use you. Luca gestured impatiently. Answer the question. $340,000. The number fell out of her like a confession. Medical bills for my brother, my mom's mortgage, student loans, credit cards I used to cover the other debts. She laughed bitterly. I'm 26 years old and I'll be paying off my life until I'm 60. Luca tapped his fingers against the desk. What if I erased all of it? Elena blinked. What? $340,000. What if I made it disappear? Paid off every hospital, every bank, every creditor, made your family's problems vanish overnight. His eyes never left hers. What would you give me in return? Her heart slammed against her ribs. I don't understand. Yes, you do. Luca stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Rain hammered the glass. You search for a way to marry a mafia boss because some part of you, desperate, exhausted, half insane, believed that kind of money could solve your problems. He turned back toward her. You were right. Elena couldn't breathe. I'll erase your debt, all of it. I'll set up a trust fund for your brother's medical care. I'll pay off your mother's house and give her enough income to retire comfortably. Luca crossed back to his desk. In exchange, you'll marry me. The world tilted. You're insane, Elena whispered. I'm practical. Luca pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. Read. Elena's hands shook as she opened it. Inside sat a contract. Thick, detailed, professionally drafted. The words blurred together. Marriage. 6 months. Public appearances. Financial compensation. Non-disclosure agreements. This is a business arrangement, Luca explained. I need a wife for 6 months to secure alliances with old money crime families who refuse to trust an unmarried boss. You need money to save your family. We both get what we want. You could marry anyone. Elena's voice sounded distant in her own ears. Why me? Because you're nobody. Luca said it without cruelty, just fact. No connections, no ties to rival families, no history that complicates things. You're perfect because you're invisible. Elena stared at the contract. Her brother's face flashed through her mind, her mother crying over foreclosure notices, the weight of debt crushing her every single day. What happens after 6 months? She asked quietly. We divorce quietly. You walk away with enough money to start over anywhere you want. Full financial independence. Your family's secured forever. Luca leaned against his desk. Or you refuse, and I fire you tonight for security violations. You'll never work in this city again. Your debts will bury you. Your family loses everything. That's not a choice. That's extortion. That's reality. Luca's expression didn't change. I don't make fair offers. I make offers that benefit me. Right now, you benefit too. Don't confuse that with kindness. Elena looked down at the contract. The numbers swam. $340,000 erased. Her brother's surgery covered. Her mother's house saved. All she had to do was marry a monster for 6 months. I need time to think, she said. You have 30 seconds. That's not 25 seconds. Elena's breath came fast. This is insane. 20 seconds. I don't even know you. 15. Luca checked his watch like he was timing a business meeting. You know enough. I'm rich. I'm dangerous. And I'm offering you the only way out of the hole you're drowning in. I can't just, 10 seconds. Elena closed her eyes, saw her brother's hospital bed, her mother's tears, the endless pile of bills that never stopped growing. 5 seconds. She opened her eyes and looked directly at Luca Devereaux. If I say yes, I want it in writing that my family never finds out the truth. They think this is real. Luca's expression shifted slightly, almost impressed. Done. And I want access to my own money, not an allowance. Real financial independence during the 6 months. Agreed. And if you hurt me, the deal's off. Luca moved closer. Close enough that Elena could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Close enough to smell expensive cologne and something darker underneath. Violence, power, control. I won't hurt you, he said quietly. But the world I live in might. Are you willing to risk that? Elena thought about her brother, her mother, the life she'd been drowning in. "Yes," she whispered. Luca pulled a pen from his jacket and handed it to her. "Sign." Elena Whitmore signed her name on the contract that would make her Mrs. Devereaux. She had no idea she'd just signed away far more than 6 months. She'd signed away every safe, ordinary thing she'd ever known. But the next 72 hours moved so fast, Elena barely remembered breathing. Luca's team descended on her life like a tactical strike force. Within 6 hours, every debt she owed had been paid in full. Her brother's surgery was scheduled at the best hospital in Chicago with the top surgeon in the country. Her mother's mortgage vanished overnight, replaced by a letter from a law firm explaining an anonymous benefactor had purchased the property and transferred ownership directly to her. Elena tried calling her mother, tried explaining, but what could she say? "Hi, Mom. I married my boss in a contract arrangement to erase our debt, and now I live in a penthouse with a man who might be a criminal kingpin." Instead, she lied. "We fell in love," Elena said over the phone, while Luca's staff packed her apartment into boxes. "I know it's fast, I know it sounds crazy, but he's amazing, Mom. He's taking care of everything." Her mother cried with relief. Her brother sent a text with nothing but heart emojis. Elena sat on the bathroom floor of her empty apartment and cried too, not from relief, from terror. By the second day, Elena had moved into Luca's penthouse. It occupied the entire top floor of Devereaux Tower, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, art worth more than most houses, everything sharp, cold, expensive, and armed security everywhere. Men in suits patrolled the hallways. Cameras monitored every entrance. Bulletproof glass separated the penthouse from the outside world. Elena realized quickly this wasn't just wealth. This was a fortress. Luca gave her a brief tour without emotion. "Your room, your closet, your bathroom, stay out of my office. Don't answer the door. Don't leave without security. Don't talk to reporters." "I'm not a prisoner," Elena said. Luca looked at her like she'd said something funny. "You're my wife. In my world, that's the same thing." He left her standing alone in a bedroom bigger than her old apartment. That night, Elena lay awake in expensive sheets that felt like silk and ice. Down the hall, she could hear Luca moving through his office. He never seemed to sleep, just worked through the darkness like rest was a weakness he couldn't afford. She wondered what she'd gotten herself into. She wondered if she'd survive 6 months. On the third day, Luca's publicist arrived, a sharp woman named Caroline who looked like she ate journalists for breakfast. "We're announcing the engagement tonight," Caroline said without preamble. "Charity gala, black tie. Every media outlet in Chicago will be there." Elena stared. "Tonight?" "Mr. Devereaux doesn't waste time." Caroline handed her a garment bag. "Wear this, smile. Let him do the talking. Don't elaborate, don't improvise. Just be pretty and quiet." "I'm not a doll," Elena said. Caroline's smile turned sharp. "For the next 6 months, you're exactly that. Get used to it." The dress cost more than Elena used to make in 3 months. Black silk, fitted, elegant. The kind of thing that transformed ordinary women into the kind of people who belonged on magazine covers. Elena stared at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. That evening, Luca appeared in the doorway of her room wearing a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of some dark, beautiful nightmare. He studied her without expression. "You look acceptable," he said. "You look like a mobster playing dress-up," Elena shot back before she could stop herself. Luca's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "That's exactly what I am." The gala took place in the historic hotel ballroom, dripping with chandeliers and old money. Chicago's elite filled the room. Politicians, celebrities, business magnates, and scattered among them, men who carried themselves with the same dangerous stillness Luca did. Crime bosses. Elena recognized them instinctively, the way security hovered nearby, the way other guests gave them respectful distance, the way they watched everything with eyes that had seen things normal people never would. Luca kept his hand on the small of her back, possessive, controlling. His touch burned through the silk of her dress. "Smile," he murmured near her ear. "You're madly in love with me." "I don't even like you," Elena whispered back. "Fake it better." They moved through the crowd like sharks through shallow water. Everyone wanted Luca's attention. Everyone feared him. Elena watched men twice his age defer to him with obvious nervousness. watched women look at him like they'd happily destroy their own lives for one night. Then Luca led her onto a small stage at the front of the ballroom. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," Luca said. His voice carried effortless authority. "I'm not a man who shares personal matters publicly, but tonight is different." He turned toward Elena. His hand found hers. 3 weeks ago, I met someone who changed everything. Someone who reminded me that even men like me deserve something real. His eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, Elena almost believed him. "Elena Whitmore agreed to marry me, and I'm the luckiest bastard in Chicago." The room erupted in applause. Elena's heart hammered. Cameras flashed. People surged forward with congratulations. The lie became real in front of hundreds of witnesses. Luca kissed her knuckles gently. "Wave," he said quietly. "Smile. You just became the most famous woman in the city." Elena smiled. Inside, she was screaming. Later that night, back in the penthouse, Elena ripped off the dress and threw it across the room. "You didn't tell me you were going to announce it like that." Luca poured himself a drink. "I told you there would be public appearances." "That wasn't an appearance. That was a spectacle. You made me look like some idiot who fell in love with her boss in 3 weeks." "That's exactly the story we're selling." Luca sipped his whiskey. "If you can't handle this, the door's right there." Elena spun toward him. "You think I'm that easy to break?" "I think you're terrified." Luca set down his glass. "I think you're in over your head. I think you're realizing this isn't a fairy tale and you're stuck with a man you're afraid of." "I'm not afraid of you." "You should be." Elena crossed the room until she stood directly in front of him, close enough to see the cold fury in his eyes, close enough to feel the tension radiating off him like heat. "You want me to be afraid?" she said quietly. "Fine. I'm afraid. I'm terrified. I signed a contract with a man I don't know who controls half of Chicago and probably has blood on his hands." Her voice shook but didn't break. "But I did it anyway, because my family needed me. So don't stand there and lecture me about fear. You have no idea what I've survived to get here." Luca stared at her. Something shifted in his expression, something almost like respect. "Get some sleep," he said finally. "Tomorrow we meet with the wedding planner. We're not really getting married." "Yes, we are. In 7 days. Because that's how long crime families are willing to wait before they start questioning whether this is real." Elena's stomach dropped. 7 days? 7 days. Luca walked past her toward his office. "Better start pretending you love me convincingly. Your family's depending on it." He disappeared down the hall. Elena stood alone in the vast penthouse and realized something terrible. She was about to marry Luca Devereaux in front of the entire city. And somewhere buried beneath her fear was a feeling even more dangerous: curiosity about the man behind the monster. Tip: the wedding preparations consumed the next week like wildfire through dry timber. Elena barely had time to process one decision before 3 more crashed down. Flowers, invitations, seating arrangements, security details. Every element controlled and managed by Luca's team with military precision. Elena sat through tastings she couldn't taste, looked at flower arrangements she couldn't see, smiled for the wedding planner while her brain screamed that this wasn't real. But the dress was real, custom designed, hand-beaded, the kind of gown girls dreamed about their entire lives. Elena stood in front of the mirror during her final fitting and felt like she was staring at someone else's future. "You look beautiful," the seamstress said. Elena wanted to vomit. That night, Luca found her sitting on the balcony of the penthouse, staring out at Chicago's glowing skyline. Rain had stopped. The city looked clean and cold beneath the moonlight. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "I'm having 7th and 8th thoughts." Elena didn't look at him. "This is insane." "Most worthwhile things are." "You don't actually believe that." Luca leaned against the railing beside her. "I believe survival requires insane decisions. I believe power comes from doing what others won't. And I believe you're stronger than you think." Elena finally looked at him. "Why do you need this? You have everything. Money, power, control. Why do you need a fake wife?" Luca was quiet for a long moment. "Because the families I do business with don't trust unmarried men. They see it as instability, weakness. A man with a wife is grounded, predictable, loyal. That's medieval. That's tradition. And in my world, tradition is currency. He met her eyes. I need their trust to expand my operations. I need their cooperation to avoid a war. And I need a wife to get both. So I'm a business strategy. You're a very expensive business strategy. Luca almost smiled. Don't sell yourself short. Elena shook her head. What happens when they find out this is fake? They won't, because we're going to make it look real enough that even you start believing it. His words sent a chill down her spine. The wedding took place on Saturday in a private cathedral that looked like something out of a Gothic nightmare. Stone walls, stained glass, high vaulted ceilings that swallowed sound and made every footstep echo like a gunshot. Armed security lined every entrance. Crime bosses filled the pews wearing expensive suits and dangerous expressions. Elena's mother sat in the front row crying happy tears. Her brother smiled at her from his wheelchair, his surgery successful, his future secured. They had no idea the truth. Elena walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away. No friends in attendance, just her and the weight of the lie crushing her chest with every step. Luca waited at the altar. He looked devastating. Black tuxedo, dark eyes, tattoos hidden beneath gloves that made him look civilized enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. But Elena knew better. She knew the violence beneath the surface, the power he wielded with a single phone call, the bodies rumored to have disappeared on his orders. She knew she was marrying a monster, and she did it anyway. The ceremony blurred. Words she didn't hear, vows she didn't mean, a ring that burned like a brand on her finger. Then Luca lifted her veil and looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. You're shaking, he said quietly. I'm terrified, she whispered back. Good. Fear keeps you alive. Then he kissed her. It wasn't the performative kiss she expected, not gentle or respectful or fake. It was possession. His hand slid to the back of her neck. His mouth claimed hers with brutal certainty. The kiss tasted like power and promises, and something darker Elena couldn't name. When he pulled back, she couldn't breathe. Mrs. Devereaux, he said, just loud enough for the room to hear. The cathedral erupted in applause. Elena Whitmore was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone dangerous, someone married to Chicago's most feared mafia boss. That night, the penthouse felt different, colder, more permanent. Elena stood in front of the mirror in her wedding dress, wondering how she'd gotten here. 7 days ago, she'd been nobody. Now she was Mrs. Devereaux. Now her face was on every tabloid in the city. Now her life belonged to a man who terrified her. A knock on her door made her jump. It's open, she called. Luca stepped inside. He'd removed his jacket and tie, rolled up his sleeves. For the first time, she saw the tattoos covering his forearms. Not decorative, more like scars made permanent, marks of violence and survival. We need to talk, he said. About what? About the rules. Elena crossed her arms. More rules? I thought the contract covered everything. The contract covers business. This covers survival. Luca moved closer. There are people who will try to use you against me now. Rival families, federal agents, journalists looking for dirt. You can't trust anyone outside this penthouse. I can't trust anyone inside it either. Luca's jaw tightened. You can trust that I'll keep you alive. That's more than most people get. Lucky me. You think this is a game? Luca's voice went dangerously quiet. You think I'm playing? People die in my world, Elena. They die because they're careless, because they trust the wrong person, because they forget that every smile hides a knife. Then why did you pull me into it? Elena shot back. Why drag some nobody into your nightmare if it's so dangerous? Because I needed someone expendable. The words hit like a slap. Someone I could walk away from if things went wrong. Someone who wouldn't leave a trail of consequences behind. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Get out. Elena, I said get out. Her voice shook. I signed your contract. I married you. I'm playing my part. But I don't have to listen to you tell me I'm expendable in my own bedroom. So get the hell out. For a moment, Luca just stared at her. Then he turned and walked out without another word. The door closed. Elena sank onto the bed and let the tears come. She'd married a man who saw her as collateral damage. She'd sold herself to save her family. And somewhere beneath the fear and anger and regret was a terrible realization. She had no idea how she was going to survive the next 6 months. Elena woke the next morning to silence. Not peaceful silence. the kind that pressed against her ears like water at the bottom of a deep pool. She'd cried herself to sleep still wearing the wedding dress. Now the beaded fabric bit into her ribs and the veil tangled around her throat like a noose. She ripped it off and stumbled to the bathroom, catching her reflection in the mirror. Smeared makeup, swollen eyes, hair destroyed. Mrs. Devereaux looked like hell. She showered until the water ran cold, scrubbing off the previous night like it was dirt she could wash away. It didn't work. The ring on her finger stayed exactly where Luca had put it. Heavy, permanent, a brand that marked her as his. When she finally emerged from her room, the penthouse felt empty. No Luca, no staff. Just the low hum of the city 40 floors below, and the weight of expensive silence. Elena found coffee already made in the kitchen. A note sat beside it in handwriting so precise it looked typed. Had to handle business. Security stays with you. Don't leave the building. L. No apology for last night. No acknowledgement that he'd called her expendable to her face. Just orders delivered like she was another employee on his payroll. Elena crumpled the note and threw it across the kitchen. Trouble in paradise already? She spun around. A woman stood in the doorway. Late 30s, sharp suit, blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She held a tablet and wore the expression of someone permanently annoyed by everything. "Who the hell are you?" Elena demanded. "Caroline, Luca's publicist. We met at the gala." The woman walked past Elena and poured herself coffee like she owned the place. "Though I'm not surprised you don't remember. You looked ready to pass out the entire night." "I was terrified." "That came through beautifully on camera, very authentic." Caroline sipped her coffee. "The wedding photos are trending worldwide, 12 million impressions in the first 6 hours. Everyone loves Chicago's mysterious billionaire finally settling down." Elena felt sick. "I need you to leave." "Can't. Luca hired me to manage your public image for the next 6 months, which means we're going to be very close whether you like it or not." Caroline set down her coffee. "First order of business? You have 3 interview requests. Good Morning Chicago wants the happy couple for a segment next week. Vogue wants a feature on your whirlwind romance. And no." Caroline raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "I said no. I'm not doing interviews." "That's not your decision." "Yes, it is." Elena crossed her arms. "The contract says I have to make public appearances. It doesn't say I have to sit for interviews and lie about falling in love." "The contract says you do whatever Luca needs you to do to maintain the illusion." Caroline's voice went cold. "And right now he needs you to be the adoring wife. So you'll smile, you'll gush, and you'll convince the world that you're madly in love with him." "Or what?" "Or the families he's trying to impress start asking questions. And when crime bosses start asking questions, people start dying." Caroline leaned against the counter. "You think this is about tabloids and photo ops? This is about survival. Luca's, yours, your family's. So stop acting like a child and do your job." Elena's hands shook with rage. "Get out!" "I'll be back tomorrow. Wear something photogenic. We're having lunch at his mother's estate." "His what?" But Caroline was already gone. Elena stood alone in the kitchen, feeling like she'd been hit by a truck. Luca had a mother? He had family? The man who barely seemed human enough to sleep had an actual living parent? She grabbed her phone and did what any normal person would do. She Googled him. The results exploded across her screen. Thousands of articles, hundreds of photos. Luca Devereaux wasn't just rich, he was infamous. Billionaire tech mogul expands. Empire Devereaux. Global Holdings acquires fifth Fortune 500 company. Chicago's most eligible bachelor. Finally off the market. But beneath the corporate headlines sat darker ones. Federal investigation into Devereaux Holdings. Finds no evidence. Rival crime family found dead. After dispute with Chicago syndicate anonymous sources. Link Devereaux to organized crime network. Every article mentioned his mother. Victoria Devereaux. Old Chicago money. Socialite. Philanthropist. Widow of Antonio Devereaux, who died under mysterious circumstances when Luca was 19. The photos of Victoria showed a woman who looked carved from marble, beautiful, cold, terrifying in the way only certain wealthy women could be. Elena's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Wear the blue dress in your closet. Car leaves at noon. Don't be late." L. She wanted to throw the phone through the window. Instead, she went to the closet and found the blue dress. It probably cost more than her old car. She put it on because she didn't have a choice. At exactly noon, security escorted her downstairs where a black SUV waited. The driver said nothing, just drove north through Chicago while Elena watched the city blur past bulletproof windows. They arrived at an estate that made Luca's penthouse look modest. Sprawling mansion, manicured grounds, gates that required 3 separate security checkpoints. Victoria Devereaux's kingdom. The driver opened Elena's door. She stepped out onto gravel that crunched like broken bones beneath her heels. Luca stood near the entrance talking quietly to a man in a suit. When he saw Elena, he dismissed the man with a single gesture and walked over. "You're late," he said. Elena checked her phone. "It's 12:03. I said noon. You also said I was expendable, so forgive me if I don't stress about 3 minutes." Luca's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might actually yell. Instead, he grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the house. "My mother doesn't tolerate disrespect. You will be polite. You will be charming. You will convince her this marriage is real." "Why does she care?" "Because she's the reason I need a wife in the first place." Luca stopped at the door. "She controls half the family business. She has alliances with every crime family in the Midwest, and she thinks I'm unstable without a woman to keep me grounded." "Are you?" Luca looked at her with something close to honesty. "Probably." Then he opened the door and pulled her inside. The interior looked like a museum. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that belonged in galleries. Everything perfect and cold and untouchable. Victoria Devereaux sat in a sunroom overlooking gardens that probably required a full-time staff. She wore white, hair pulled back, jewelry that could fund a small country. She looked at Elena the way scientists look at bacteria. "So this is the girl," Victoria said. Not a question, an observation. "Mother, this is Elena, my wife." Luca's hand tightened on Elena's lower back. A warning. "I can see that." Victoria gestured to the chairs across from her. "Sit." They sat. Victoria studied Elena in silence for what felt like an hour. Then she smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "You're very pretty," Victoria said, "and very young, and very clearly out of your depth." "Mother..." "Quiet, Luca. I'm speaking to your wife." Victoria leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, dear, what attracted you to my son? His money? His power? Or perhaps the danger?" Elena felt Luca tense beside her. She knew what he expected: compliance, agreement, the script. But something inside her snapped. "I married him because he offered me a deal I couldn't refuse," Elena said calmly, "and because my family needed help more than I needed dignity." The room went silent. Victoria's expression didn't change. "At least you're honest." "I don't see the point in lying to you. You clearly already know this isn't some fairy tale romance." "I know my son doesn't do romance. He does transactions." Victoria sipped her tea. "What I don't know is whether you're strong enough to survive being one of them." "I guess we'll find out." Victoria actually laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. "I like her, Luca. She has more spine than the last 3 women you dated combined." "I didn't date them. I used them for appearances." "And look how well that worked." Victoria turned back to Elena. "My son is dangerous, dear. Not because he's violent, though he is. Not because he's powerful, though he controls half this city. He's dangerous because he doesn't know how to let people in. Everyone is either an asset or a threat. There's no middle ground." "I've noticed." "Have you also noticed that he's falling for you?" Elena's breath caught. "What?" "Don't look so shocked. I've known my son for 32 years. I know what it looks like when he's invested in something." Victoria set down her teacup. "The question is whether you'll destroy him or save him." Luca stood abruptly. "We're done here." "Sit down, Luca." "I said we're done." His voice carried an edge Elena hadn't heard before. "You wanted to meet her. You met her. Now we're leaving." Victoria didn't argue, just watched them both with those cold, calculating eyes. Luca practically dragged Elena out of the house. He didn't speak until they were back in the SUV driving away from the estate. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Elena stared at him. "Did you just apologize?" My mother is impossible. She enjoys making people uncomfortable. I shouldn't have brought you there without warning you. She thinks you're falling for me. She's wrong. Is she? Elena turned in her seat to face him. Because last night you called me expendable. This morning you left without a word. And now you're apologizing. Which version of you is real? Luca looked out the window. The one that keeps you alive. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They drove the rest of the way in silence. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She wandered through the dark penthouse trying to make sense of the past 48 hours. Married, meeting her criminal mother-in-law, being told she was both expendable and somehow important enough to destroy Luca. None of it made sense. She found Luca on the balcony. He stood at the railing staring out at Chicago like he was watching for enemies in the darkness. A glass of whiskey sat beside him, mostly empty. You should be asleep, he said without turning around. So should you. I don't sleep well. Elena moved closer. Why not? Because people who sleep die. He finally looked at her. In my world, you stay awake or you stop waking up. That's paranoid. That's survival. Luca turned back to the city. My father was killed in his sleep, throat cut while he lay next to my mother. I was 19. I found him in the morning. Elena felt something shift in her chest. I'm sorry. Don't be. He was a monster. The world's better without him. Then why do you look like you still miss him? Luca's hands tightened on the railing. Because he taught me everything I know about power, about control, about never trusting anyone enough to let them close. Is that why you married me? Because I'm not close enough to hurt you? I married you because you were supposed to be temporary. He looked at her again. His eyes held something dangerous, something honest. But you're not behaving like temporary. You're fighting back. You're challenging me. You looked my mother in the eye and told her the truth. Should I have lied? Most people do. Luca moved closer, close enough that Elena could smell the whiskey on his breath. Most people are terrified of her, but you just sat there and acted like you belonged. I didn't belong. I was drowning. You didn't look like it. His hand reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch burned. You look like exactly the kind of woman who could survive my world. Elena's heart hammered. I'm not that woman. I'm just pretending. So am I. Before she could respond, Luca's phone buzzed. He pulled it out and his expression went dark. What's wrong? Elena asked. Get inside. Now. Why? Now, Elena. The command in his voice made her move. She rushed inside. Luca followed, already making a call. Lock it down, he said into the phone. Full security. No one in or out without my clearance. He hung up and turned to Elena. Pack a bag. We're leaving. Leaving? Why? Because someone just tried to kill my mother. Elena's blood went cold. What? Bombing. Her car. She's alive, but the message is clear. Luca moved past her toward his office. The families know about you now. They know you're real, which means you just became a target. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to pack. He stopped at his office door. We're leaving Chicago tonight. There's a safe house upstate. Armed compound. No one gets in without going through 20 security checkpoints. For how long? Until I find whoever did this and bury them. Elena watched him disappear into his office, watched the door close, heard him making rapid-fire phone calls in a voice that promised violence. She'd been married for 2 days. Already someone wanted her dead. Elena went to her room and started packing with shaking hands. She threw clothes into a bag without looking. Her brain couldn't process what was happening. Bombing, target, safe house. This was supposed to be 6 months of public appearances and pretending. Now it was life and death. 30 minutes later, they were in the back of an armored SUV racing north through Chicago with a security convoy surrounding them. Luca sat beside her making calls and issuing orders like a general coordinating a war. Elena stared out the window watching the city disappear behind them. Who would do this? She asked quietly. Rival families, federal agents trying to draw me out. Someone with a grudge. Luca didn't look up from his phone. The list is long. Your mother said you were dangerous. She was wrong. You're not dangerous. You're hunted. It's the same thing. They drove for 3 hours into rural Illinois where trees replaced buildings, and darkness swallowed the road. The convoy turned onto a private drive that wound through dense forest for another 20 minutes before reaching gates that looked military-grade. Beyond them sat a compound. Main house, guest buildings, security barracks, walls topped with cameras and sensors. A fortress in the middle of nowhere. They were escorted inside the main house. It looked nothing like the penthouse. More functional, less beautiful. Everything designed for security over aesthetics. Luca immediately disappeared into what looked like a war room. Elena stood in the entrance hall with her bag, feeling lost. A woman appeared. Late 50s, kind face. She wore simple clothes and smiled warmly. "You must be Elena. I'm Margaret. I manage the house." She reached for Elena's bag. "Let me show you to your room." Elena followed her upstairs and down a hallway. Margaret opened a door to a bedroom that looked surprisingly normal. Comfortable bed. Simple furniture. Windows overlooking dark forest. "Mr. Devereaux asked me to make sure you're comfortable," Margaret said. "Are you hungry?" "I don't think I can eat." Margaret's expression softened. "I've worked for the Devereaux family for 20 years. I've seen a lot of scared young women walk through these doors. But you're the first one he's married. It's not real." "Isn't it?" Margaret smiled. "I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you when you walked in. Like he was checking to make sure you were still breathing." Elena sank onto the bed. "Someone tried to kill his mother. Victoria's survived worse. She's tougher than she looks." Margaret moved toward the door. "Get some rest. Things will look clearer in the morning." She left Elena alone. Elena lay back on this bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling. She'd been married for 2 days. 2 days. And already she was hiding in a compound while Luca hunted whoever had tried to kill his family. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Just saw the news about Victoria. Are you safe? Please tell me you're okay." Elena stared at the message. Her mother had no idea the truth. Thought this was real love. Thought Elena had married into a normal, wealthy family. She typed back, "I'm fine. Luca's keeping me safe." It wasn't entirely a lie. She must have fallen asleep because when she woke, pale dawn light filtered through the windows. Her phone showed 6:47 a.m. Elena got up and wandered downstairs. The house felt empty. She found the kitchen and coffee already made. Then she heard voices. She followed them to the war room Margaret had mentioned. The door stood slightly open. Inside, Luca stood over a table covered in maps and photos, talking to 3 men in tactical gear. "I don't care how well protected he thinks he is," Luca was saying. "I want him found. I want everyone connected to him found. And I want them brought to me alive." "What about the feds?" one of the men asked. "Let them investigate. They won't find anything." Luca's voice went cold. "But make sure our people know. Anyone who talks to federal agents disappears. No warnings. No second chances." Elena's blood turned to ice. This was the man she'd married. Not the one who apologized for his mother. Not the one who touched her hair on the balcony. This was the monster. She must have made a sound because Luca's head snapped toward the door. His eyes locked onto hers. "Out," he said to the men. They left immediately. Luca walked over and closed the door behind Elena. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." "Then you know this is what I do. This is who I am." "You're planning to kill people." "I'm planning to protect my family." Luca moved closer. "Someone tried to murder my mother. They sent a message. Now I'm sending one back." "By becoming exactly what everyone says you are?" "I already am what they say. I just usually hide it better." His eyes searched her face. "Are you afraid now?" Elena's hands shook. "Yes." "Good. Stay afraid. It'll keep you careful." "I want to go home." "You are home. This is your life now." Luca's expression didn't soften. "You married me. You took my name. You became part of this world. There's no going back." "The contract said 6 months." "The contract is irrelevant. Someone just painted a target on your back. Even if we divorce tomorrow, you'll still be a threat to anyone who wants to hurt me. You'll still be leverage. You'll still need protection for the rest of your life." The words hit like bullets. "So that's it?" Elena's voice cracked. "I'm just trapped?" "You were always trapped. You just didn't realize it yet." Luca turned away. "Margaret will bring you breakfast. Stay in the house. Don't go outside without security." He walked out. Elena stood alone in the war room, surrounded by maps marking violence and photos of men who were probably already dead. She'd signed a contract thinking she could survive 6 months. Now she realized 6 months might be all she had left. The next 3 days blurred together. Elena stayed in the compound watching Luca transform into someone she didn't recognize. He barely slept, barely ate, just worked through the nights coordinating whatever dark operation he was running. Men came and went, meetings behind closed doors, phone calls in languages Elena didn't understand. And always, the sense that violence was building towards something terrible. On the 4th night, Elena found Luca in his office staring at security footage on multiple screens. He looked exhausted, dangerous. "Did you find them?" she asked from the doorway. "Yes." "What happens now?" Luca didn't look away from the screens. "Now I make sure they understand what happens when you threaten my family." "You mean you're going to kill them?" "I mean I'm going to make an example that prevents the next 10 people from trying." He finally looked at her. "This is the world you married into. This is what it takes to survive." "I didn't marry into this. I married into a contract. The contract made you my wife. Being my wife means living with what I have to do." Elena moved into the room. "And what if I can't?" "Then you leave. Walk out. I'll arrange protection, financial support. You'll never have to see me again." Luca stood. "But you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder wondering when someone decides you're still useful as leverage. That's not a choice. No, it's a consequence." He walked toward her. "You wanted money to save your family. You got it. But money doesn't come free in my world. It comes with blood, with violence, with nights like this where I have to become the monster everyone thinks I am just to keep the people I care about alive." "You care about me?" The question hung between them. Luca's expression cracked. Just for a second, just long enough for Elena to see something raw underneath. "More than I should," he admitted quietly. "More than is safe for either of us." Before Elena could respond, an explosion shook the compound. The windows rattled. Alarms shrieked. Luca grabbed Elena and pulled her to the floor as gunfire erupted outside. "Stay down," he ordered. He pulled a gun from his desk drawer and moved to the window. Outside, the compound lit up with muzzle flashes and security lights. Someone had found them, and now they were under attack. Gunfire shredded the night. Elena pressed herself against the floor while Luca moved to the window with his weapon drawn. Outside, muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like fireworks designed to kill. "How many?" Luca spoke into his phone, calm despite the chaos erupting around them. Elena couldn't hear the response, just watched Luca's jaw tighten. "Fall back to the inner perimeter. Protect the main house." He ended the call and turned to Elena. "We need to move. Now." "Move where?" "Safe room, basement level, reinforced walls. They'd need artillery to get through." Another explosion rattled the windows, closer this time. Elena's ears rang. Luca grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. They ran down the hallway while the sounds of battle intensified outside. Security personnel rushed past them, heading toward the firefight. Nobody stopped to explain. Everyone moved with the precision of soldiers who'd trained for exactly this scenario. The basement stairs descended into concrete and steel. Emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red. Luca punched a code into a keypad, and a massive door swung open, revealing a room that looked like a bunker. Reinforced walls, security monitors, weapons rack, enough supplies to survive a siege. "Get inside," Luca ordered. Elena stumbled through the doorway. Luca followed and sealed the door behind them. The sounds of gunfire became muffled, distant, like a nightmare happening to someone else. "What's happening?" Elena's voice shook. "Someone found the compound, someone with serious resources and a death wish." Luca moved to the monitors showing multiple camera feeds. "They hit us with 12 men, professional, well-armed. This isn't random." "Who would know we're here?" "Very few people." Luca's expression went dark. "Which means someone inside my organization talked." The words hung in the air like smoke. Elena watched the monitors. Outside, Luca's security team engaged the attackers in brutal close-quarters combat. Bodies fell on both sides. Blood spread across gravel and grass. "They're going to die because of me," Elena whispered. "They're dying because someone wants me vulnerable. You're just the excuse. Luca pulled out his phone and started making calls. Marcus, talk to me. Elena couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, just watched Luca's face transform from focused to furious. When? He demanded. How long has he been feeding them information? Silence while he listened. Then Luca threw his phone across the room. It shattered against the concrete wall. What happened? Elena asked. We found the leak. His voice came out cold enough to freeze blood. Vincent Romano, my head of security for the past 8 years, been selling information to the Castellano family since before I married you. Elena's stomach dropped. The Castellanos? Rival crime family. They've been trying to move into my territory for a decade. I've blocked them at every turn, killed their leadership, destroyed their operations. Luca's hands clenched into fists. Apparently they decided to get creative. By targeting me. By targeting the only thing they think I care about. He looked at her with something close to pain. They're right, I do care, which makes you the perfect weapon. On the monitors, the firefight began to die down. Luca's team had superior numbers and better positioning. The attackers retreated toward the tree line, leaving bodies behind. Luca made another call. Capture any survivors. I want them breathing when I get there. He hung up and moved toward the weapons rack. Started loading magazines with methodical precision. What are you doing? Elena asked. Going to have a conversation with Vincent. You mean you're going to kill him? I mean, I'm going to find out exactly what he told the Castellanos. Then I'm going to make him regret every word. Luca checked his weapon. You stay here. Door stays locked until I come back. Don't do this. He looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Don't do what? Don't become the monster they want you to be. Don't prove them right. They already know what I am. I'm just reminding them why they should be afraid. Luca moved toward the door. Stay here, Elena. That's not a request. The door sealed behind him. Elena stood alone in the safe room surrounded by monitors showing the aftermath of violence. Bodies on the ground. Blood everywhere. Security personnel checking corpses for survivors. This was Luca's world. This was what she'd married into. Hours passed. Elena watched the monitors obsessively. Watched Luca's team secure the perimeter. Watched them drag 2 wounded attackers into one of the outbuildings. Watched Luca disappear inside with them. The cameras didn't show what happened next. But 30 minutes later, Luca emerged alone. His shirt was splattered with blood that wasn't his. Elena felt sick. Dawn broke cold and gray over the compound. The door to the safe room finally opened. Luca stood there looking like he hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. It's clear, he said. You can come out. Elena followed him upstairs. The main house showed minimal damage, but the grounds looked like a war zone. Bullet casings everywhere. Scorch marks from explosions. Blood staining the gravel. Where's Vincent? She asked quietly. Dead. Along with the 2 men we captured. Elena stopped walking. You killed them. I got the information I needed. Then I eliminated the threat. Luca kept moving toward his office. The Castellanos have been planning this for months. Vincent fed them everything. Our security protocols, safe house locations, my mother's schedule. Yours. So what happens now? Now I go to war. Luca pulled out a tablet and started scrolling through files. The Castellanos think they can strike at my family and walk away. I'm going to teach them otherwise. By doing what? Killing more people? By destroying their entire operation, every business, every asset, every person loyal to them. His voice carried no emotion, just cold certainty. When I'm done, the Castellano name will be a warning other families remember for generations. Elena felt the weight of it crushing her. This is because of me. Because you married me. This is because they made a choice. They chose violence. Now they live with the consequences. Or die with them. Luca finally looked at her. You need to understand something. In my world, showing weakness gets you killed. Hesitation gets you killed. Mercy gets you killed. I can't afford any of those things if I want to keep you breathing. I never asked you to become a murderer for me. You didn't have to ask. You became my wife. That makes your survival my responsibility whether you like it or not. Before Elena could respond, Luca's phone rang. He answered it without looking away from her. What? He snapped. Elena watched his expression change. Confusion, then anger, then something worse. Fear. When? Luca demanded. How long ago? He ended the call and started moving fast. We need to go. Now. What happened? The attack on the compound was a distraction. Luca grabbed her arm. The real target was in Chicago. Elena's blood went cold. My family? Your brother. They took him from the hospital 20 minutes ago. The world stopped. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just stood there while Luca's words replayed in her head like a horror she couldn't escape. They took him. Her brother. Her baby brother who'd just had surgery, who was still recovering, who had nothing to do with any of this. No. The word came out broken. No, 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 no. Elena, listen to me. Luca grabbed her shoulders. We're going to get him back. I have people already tracking the vehicle. We'll find him. You said I was safe. You said marrying you would protect my family. I was wrong. The admission hit harder than any bullet. Elena shoved him away. You were wrong? That's all you have to say? My brother is gone because of you. Because I signed your contract. Because I trusted you when you said you'd keep us safe. I know. You know. Elena's voice rose to a scream. You know. My brother is being held by criminals right now, and all you can say is you know? Luca's phone rang again. He answered it, listened. His expression went darker. Send me the location. He hung up. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? You. They'll trade your brother for you. The safe room felt like it was closing in. Elena couldn't get enough air. Then let's go. Take me to them. Make the trade. It's a trap. The moment I hand you over, they'll kill you both. Then what do we do? Luca moved to his desk and pulled out a map. Started marking locations with brutal efficiency. We hit them first, before they're ready, before they expect it. You want to attack them while they have my brother? I want to end this before they have time to hurt him. Luca looked up. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Elena wanted to say no. Wanted to scream that she'd never trust him again, that this was his fault, that her brother's blood would be on his hands if anything happened. But her brother was out there, scared, alone, in the hands of people who'd already proven they had no problem killing. What do you need me to do? She asked. Exactly what I tell you. No questions, no hesitation. Luca's eyes locked onto hers. Can you do that? Yes? Then let's go get your brother back. The drive back to Chicago took 2 hours that felt like 2 years. Elena sat in the back of the armored SUV watching trees blur past, while Luca coordinated his team via encrypted calls. He transformed completely. This wasn't the man who'd apologized for his mother. This was the Mafia boss everyone feared, cold, calculating, willing to burn the world down to achieve his objective. The Castellanos are holding him in a warehouse on the south side, Luca explained. Industrial area, abandoned, easy to defend. So how do we get in? We don't. I'm going in. You're staying in the vehicle with security. Like hell I am. Luca's jaw tightened. This isn't negotiable. Neither is this. That's my brother in there. I'm not sitting in a car while you risk his life on some tactical operation. If you go in there, you become a liability. Someone I have to protect instead of someone helping me rescue your brother. Then teach me how not to be a liability. Elena leaned forward. You have 2 hours. Show me how to use a gun. Show me how to stay safe. Show me how to be useful, because I'm going in whether you like it or not. Luca stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Change of plans. I need a second vest and a weapon for my wife. They stopped at a safe house 20 minutes outside Chicago. Inside, Luca's team had already assembled. 12 men, all armed, all wearing expressions that suggested they'd done this kind of thing before. Luca handed Elena a bulletproof vest. Put this on. She did. It felt heavy, wrong, like wearing someone else's skin. Then he handed her a pistol. Glock 19, 15 rounds. Safety here. Aim center mass. Don't hesitate if someone threatens you. Elena held the weapon with shaking hands. I've never shot anyone. Hopefully you won't have to, but if it's between you and them, choose you. Luca showed her the basics: loading, unloading, stance, trigger discipline. It wasn't enough, not even close, but it was all the time they had. 20 minutes later, they were moving through Chicago's industrial South Side in 3 vehicles. No lights, no sirens, just silent predators closing in on prey. The warehouse came into view, concrete and rust, windows shattered or covered with boards. One entrance facing the street, probably several others they couldn't see. Luca's convoy stopped 2 blocks away. "Final positions," Luca said into his radio. "We go in 60 seconds. Shoot anyone who's not us or the target's brother." Elena's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through the vest. This was happening. They were about to attack a building full of armed criminals to rescue her brother, and she was going in with them. Luca looked at her. "Last chance to stay here." "No." "Then stay behind me. Don't fire unless I tell you to, and if things go wrong, you run. Understand?" "Yes." "I mean it, Elena. If I tell you to run, you don't argue. You don't hesitate. You just move." "I understand." Luca grabbed her face with both hands, kissed her hard. It tasted like desperation and goodbye. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her mouth. "For all of this. For dragging you into my world. For not protecting you better. Get my brother back alive and we'll call it even." He almost smiled. "Deal." Then they were moving. Luca's team split into 3 groups, one covering the front, one circling to the back. Luca led the center group straight toward the main entrance with Elena behind him. The warehouse door hung open. Too easy. Definitely a trap. Luca signaled his team. They moved inside, weapons raised. The interior was dark, empty, just shadows and industrial debris. Then lights flooded the space. Elena's eyes adjusted. What she saw made her blood freeze. Her brother sat tied to a chair in the center of the warehouse, tape over his mouth, eyes wide with terror, blood on his hospital gown from where they'd ripped out his IV. But he was alive. Surrounding him were 15 armed men, all pointing weapons at Luca's team, and standing behind her brother with a gun pressed to his head was someone Elena recognized. Caroline, Luca's publicist. "Hello, Luca," Caroline said with a smile that could cut glass. "Glad you could make it." Elena couldn't process what she was seeing. "You?" "Surprise." Caroline pressed the gun harder against Elena's brother's temple. "I have to say, this worked out better than I expected. I thought we'd have to grab the mother to draw you out. The brother was a bonus." Luca's voice went dead calm. "You've been working for the Castellanos this whole time. Not just working for them. Sleeping with Marco Castellano for the past 3 years. We've been planning this since before you decided you needed a wife." Caroline tilted her head. "Vincent was useful for security information, but I'm the one who's been feeding them everything else. Your mother's schedule, your safe houses, your marriage contract." Elena felt like she'd been punched. "You knew the whole time it was fake?" "Of course I knew. I helped draft the prenup." Caroline laughed. "But then something interesting happened. You 2 idiots started actually caring about each other, which made this so much easier." Luca's weapon stayed trained on Caroline. "Let the boy go. Your problem is with me. My problem is with your entire family. Your father killed Marco's father 20 years ago. Did you know that?" "Probably not. You were too busy building your empire to remember all the bodies you're standing on." Caroline's finger moved to the trigger. "Now Marco gets to return the favor, starting with everyone you love." "You kill him, you die 30 seconds later," Luca said. "Maybe. But you'll still watch him die first, and then we'll kill your wife, your mother, everyone connected to the Devereaux name." Caroline's eyes glittered with hate. "Marco wanted me to negotiate, to trade, but I convinced him that sending a message would be so much more effective." Elena's brother made a muffled sound behind the tape. His eyes found hers, terrified, begging. "Please," Elena said. "He has nothing to do with this. He's just a kid. He's leverage, and leverage only works if you're willing to use it." Caroline started to squeeze the trigger. Everything happened at once. Luca fired. Caroline jerked to the side. The gun went off next to Elena's brother's head. He screamed behind the tape. And then the warehouse erupted into chaos. Luca's team opened fire. The Castellano men fired back. Elena dropped to the ground as bullets shredded the air above her head. She couldn't see her brother, couldn't see Luca, just muzzle flashes and smoke and the deafening roar of gunfire. Someone grabbed her arm. She spun around, bringing her weapon up instinctively. Luca. Move! He dragged her toward cover behind a concrete pillar. The firefight raged around them. Bodies fell on both sides. Where's my brother? Elena screamed over the noise. My team has him. They're getting him out. Is he alive? I don't know. Elena looked around the pillar, saw two of Luca's men carrying her brother toward a side exit. He was moving, struggling, all out. Relief hit her so hard she almost collapsed. Then she saw Caroline. Luca's shot had caught her in the shoulder. Not fatal. She'd fallen behind a stack of crates and was pulling herself toward a weapon on the ground. Nobody else saw her. Elena moved without thinking. She stepped out from cover and raised her weapon. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold it steady. Caroline's fingers closed around the gun, started to turn toward Elena's brother. Elena pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her over. Her ears rang. She couldn't tell if she'd hit anything. Then Caroline slumped against the crates with a hole in her chest. Elena stared at what she'd done, at the woman she'd just killed, at the blood spreading across concrete. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders. Luca. We need to go. Now. He pulled her toward the exit. The firefight was ending. Most of the Castellano men were down. Luca's team was securing the warehouse. They burst out into cold night air. The vehicles were waiting. Elena's brother was already inside, one being checked over by a medic. Elena ran to him, ripped the tape from his mouth. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? He was crying, shaking, but he nodded. I'm okay. I'm okay. Elena hugged him so hard she thought she might break him. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Luca appeared beside them. We need to move. Police will be here in minutes. They loaded into the vehicles and raced away from the warehouse as sirens began wailing in the distance. Elena sat in the back, holding her brother while he sobbed against her shoulder. She looked down at her hands, still shaking, still holding the gun. She'd killed someone tonight, pulled the trigger and ended a life. The woman who'd been planning this whole thing, who'd betrayed them, who would have killed her brother without hesitation. Elena had killed her, and she didn't feel guilty. She felt numb. The safe house they retreated to was different from the compound, smaller, more urban, hidden in plain sight in a renovated warehouse district. The medic checked over Elena's brother. Minor injuries, shock, but alive, whole. Elena sat beside him until he finally fell asleep from exhaustion. Then she found Luca standing on the roof staring out at Chicago's skyline. He's okay, she said. I know. My team reported in. Caroline's dead. I know that too. Elena moved closer. I killed her. Yes. Should I feel worse about it? Luca finally looked at her. Probably. But feeling bad doesn't change what happened. She made her choice. You made yours. That's how survival works. Is this what your life is always like? Violence and betrayal and people trying to kill the ones you love? Yes. Elena stared out at the city. The contract was supposed to be simple, 6 months, public appearances. Then I walk away free. Nothing's free. You should know that by now. I do. She turned to face him. I also know I can't do this anymore. Luca went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying I can't live like this, constantly afraid, constantly under threat, watching people die. Her voice cracked. I killed someone tonight, Luca. I ended a life. And the worst part is I do it again to protect my brother, which means I'm already becoming someone I don't recognize. That someone kept your brother alive. That someone shouldn't exist. Elena's hands shook. I want out. I want to take my family somewhere safe, somewhere your world can't touch us. There is nowhere that's safe. Not anymore. The Castellanos know about you. Other families will too. You're marked. Running won't change that. Then what do I do? Luca stepped closer, close enough that she could see exhaustion carved into his face like scars. You stay. You let me teach you how to survive this world. You stop being the victim and start being the weapon. I don't want to be a weapon. You already are. You just proved it tonight. His hand touched her face gently. The woman who walked into my office a week ago wouldn't have pulled that trigger, but you did. Because when it mattered, you chose survival over fear. I chose my brother, And you'll have to keep choosing every day, every threat, every person who tries to use your family against you. Luca's eyes held hers. I can't protect you from that, but I can teach you to protect yourself, to be strong enough that people think twice before coming after the ones you love. Elena wanted to say no, wanted to run, wanted to go back to being the woman whose biggest problem was debt. But that woman was dead. She died the moment Elena signed that contract, the moment she became Mrs. Devereaux, the moment she pulled the trigger and discovered she was capable of violence when pushed far enough. If I stay, Elena said slowly, things change. No more treating me like property. No more decisions made without me. No more secrets. Agreed. And you teach me everything, how your world works, how to read people, how to fight, how to survive. I will. And if I decide 6 months from now that I still want out, you let me go. No arguments, no threats. Luca's jaw tightened. Even if leaving gets you killed? Even then. Because it'll be my choice. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Deal. Elena felt something shift inside her, some last piece of the woman she used to be breaking away and dissolving into darkness. Then teach me, she said. Teach me how to be someone they'll fear instead of someone they'll target. Luca pulled her close, kissed her forehead. It'll change you. You know that, right? Once you cross certain lines, you can't go back. I already crossed the line tonight. Then we'll cross the rest of them together. Elena closed her eyes and let herself lean against him. Against the monster she'd married. Against the man who dragged her into hell and was now offering to show her how to rule it. Behind them, Chicago glowed like a city made of broken promises and blood-soaked ambition. Ahead of them lay a path Elena couldn't see clearly yet, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The woman who'd typed "how to marry a mafia boss" into a search bar was gone forever. In her place stood someone harder, someone dangerous, someone who'd just discovered that when you marry the devil, you either become his victim or learn to burn just as bright. Elena Devereaux chose fire. The training started the next morning before the sun broke over Chicago's skyline. Elena woke to Luca standing in her doorway holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing gym clothes that made him look less like a billionaire and more like someone who survived through violence. Get up, he said. We start now. It's 5 in the morning. Enemies don't wait for convenient hours. He set 1 coffee on her nightstand. You have 10 minutes. Meet me in the basement. The basement had been converted into something between a gym and a training facility. Mats covered the floor. Weapons lined one wall. Punching bags hung from reinforced beams. Luca stood in the center, waiting. First lesson, he said when Elena appeared, your body is a weapon. Everything else is just an extension of what you're already capable of. He spent the next 2 hours teaching her things no one had ever shown her before. How to break someone's grip. Where to strike to cause maximum damage. How to use an attacker's momentum against them. Elena hit the mat so many times she lost count. Her body ached, sweat soaked through her clothes. But every time Luca offered to stop, she said no, because stopping meant being weak, and weak meant dead. By the 3rd day, Elena could disarm someone twice her size. By the 5th, she could shoot a target from 30 feet without her hands shaking. By the 7th, she understood the brutal calculus of survival that governed Luca's world. Violence wasn't something that happened to you. It was something you controlled, or it controlled you. But the physical training was just the beginning. The real education happened during the nights when Luca sat with her in his office and taught her how his empire actually functioned, not the legitimate businesses, the other side. Chicago is divided into territories, he explained over a map covered in colored markers. Each family controls specific neighborhoods, specific industries. You don't cross into another family's territory without permission or alliance. And if you do, war. Or worse. Luca pointed to various sections. The Castellanos controlled the south side before I dismantled them. The Morettis have the west. The Russos own most of the waterfront, and I control everything in between. How? Fear, respect, calculated violence when necessary. He met her eyes. I don't start wars, but I finish them, brutally, publicly, so the next family thinks twice before challenging me. Elena studied the map. What about the Castellanos now, after what happened? Marco Castellano is still out there. Caroline was his inside woman, but she wasn't his only resource. He's wounded, angry, which makes him exponentially more dangerous. So what do we do? Luca's expression went cold. We end him before he ends us. The plan came together over the next week. Luca's intelligence network tracked Marco Castellano to a fortified estate outside the city. Former warehouse converted into a compound. Armed guards, security systems, the kind of place designed to withstand a siege. He knows we're coming, Luca said during the strategy meeting with his top lieutenants. He's expecting a direct assault, so we're going to give him something else. What? One of the men asked. Luca looked at Elena. Bait. The room went silent. Elena felt every eye turn toward her. Explain. Marco wants me dead, but he wants you first. Revenge for Caroline, leverage to control me, the perfect psychological weapon. Luca leaned forward. So we let him think he's getting you. We arrange a meeting, a trade. Me for you. That's insane, another lieutenant said. It's tactical. Luca's voice cut through objections like a blade. Marco won't be able to resist. He'll agree to the meet. He'll bring minimal security because he thinks he has the advantage. And when he's exposed, we take him. Elena's heart hammered. You want me to walk into a meeting with the man who kidnapped my brother? I want you to be the reason he lets his guard down long enough for me to put a bullet in his head. Luca stood. But I won't force you. This only works if you're willing. Every person in the room waited for her answer. Elena thought about her brother's terrified face, about Caroline pressing a gun to his head, about the last 2 weeks learning how to fight back instead of just surviving. What do I need to do? She asked. Luca almost smiled. Exactly what I tell you. The meeting was set for 48 hours later. Neutral ground, an abandoned industrial park north of the city. Both sides would bring minimal security. Both sides would come armed but not aggressive. All of it was theater. Both sides planned to violate every term the moment they had advantage. The night before, Elena couldn't sleep. She paced the penthouse while Luca worked in his office, finalizing details. Around midnight, she finally knocked on his door. Come in. She found him at his desk surrounded by blueprints and security footage. He looked exhausted. When he saw her, something in his expression softened. Can't sleep? He asked. Keep thinking about all the ways this goes wrong. That's good. Means you're taking it seriously. Luca gestured to the chair across from him. Talk to me. What are you afraid of? Elena sat. That I'll freeze. That I'll panic when it matters. That someone else will die because I'm not strong enough. You killed Caroline without hesitating. You're stronger than you think. That was different. That was instinct. Tomorrow will be instinct too. When your life is on the line, your body knows what to do. Luca leaned back. I've been doing this for 15 years. You know how many times I've been afraid? How many? Every single time. Fear doesn't make you weak, it makes you careful. And careful keeps you breathing. Elena studied him. Do you regret it, dragging me into this? Luca was quiet for a long moment. Every day. But I'm also selfish enough to be glad you're here. Why? Because for the first time in my life, I have something worth protecting beyond power and territory. His eyes locked onto hers. You changed everything the night you signed that contract. Made me remember I'm still human underneath the monster. You're not a monster. Yes, I am. But with you, I'm a monster who wants to be better. He stood and moved around the desk. After tomorrow, this will be over. Marco dies. The Castellano family scatters. We can breathe again. And then what? Then we figure out what this is. Luca touched her face gently. The contract was supposed to be business. But somewhere along the way it became real. At least for me. Elena's breath caught. For me too. He kissed her. Not the brutal possession from their wedding. Something softer, more honest. Like he was afraid she might disappear. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. Stay alive tomorrow, he whispered. That's all I need from you. Stay alive and let me handle the rest. I'm not just bait anymore. I'm part of this. I know. That's what terrifies me. They spent the night together, not talking about tomorrow, not planning, just existing in the same space like normal people who weren't about to walk into a war. Morning came too fast. Elena dressed in clothes Luca's team had selected. Dark jeans, boots, jacket that concealed the bulletproof vest beneath. She looked like someone's girlfriend, not a weapon. That was the point. Luca appeared wearing tactical gear, weapons visible, no pretense of civility. Last chance to back out, he said. Not a chance. They drove to the industrial park in separate vehicles. Luca's convoy arrived first, established position, confirmed sight lines. Then Elena's vehicle approached, alone. Just her and a driver who was actually one of Luca's best shooters in disguise. The industrial park looked like something from a nightmare. Rusted equipment, collapsed buildings, broken pavement swallowed by weeds. Marco Castellano's convoy sat on the opposite side. 3 vehicles, 6 visible men. Elena's vehicle stopped in the center. She stepped out. Wind whipped her hair, cold bit through her jacket. Her heart slammed so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Marco emerged from his vehicle. He looked nothing like Elena expected. Not some monster, just a man in his 40s wearing an expensive suit and an expression that promised violence. "Mrs. Devereaux," he called across the distance. "Brave of you to come. I'm here for the trade. Me for Luca walking away." Marco smiled. "You actually think I'll let him walk away? After what he did to my family? I think you're smart enough to know that killing me starts a war you can't win. Can't I?" Marco gestured to his men. "Your husband has enemies everywhere. Families who'd love to see the great Luca Devereaux brought down. The moment you're dead, they'll move, and he'll be too busy grieving to stop them." Elena forced herself to stay calm. "Then what do you want?" "I want him to watch you die. I want him to feel what I felt when your bastard husband murdered my father 20 years ago." Marco pulled a gun. "And then I want him to join you." Everything happened in the space between heartbeats. Marco raised his weapon. Elena dropped to the ground. Gunfire erupted from positions surrounding the industrial park. Luca's team, hidden, waiting. Marco's men scattered for cover. Return fire shredded the air. Elena crawled toward the vehicle she'd arrived in. Bullets sparked off metal and concrete around her. Then someone grabbed her ankle. She kicked instinctively, connected with flesh, rolled over to see one of Marco's men lunging for her. Elena pulled the weapon from her jacket and fired. The man went down. She scrambled to her feet and ran for cover behind a rusted shipping container. Her driver was already there providing suppressing fire. "Where's Luca?" Elena screamed over the gunfire. "Moving on, Marco. Stay down." Elena looked around the container, saw Luca and 3 of his men advancing through the chaos toward where Marco had taken cover behind his vehicle. Marco saw them coming, started retreating toward one of the buildings. "He's running," Elena said. Her driver fired 3 shots. "Let him run. Boss will handle it." But something felt wrong. Marco wasn't panicking. He was moving with purpose, like he had a plan. Elena's brain raced through everything Luca had taught her, about reading people, about tactics. This was too easy. Marco was smart, cautious. He wouldn't agree to this meeting without a backup plan. "It's a trap," she said. "What?" "Luca, it's a trap!" She screamed it loud enough to cut through the gunfire. Luca heard, stopped advancing, looked back at her. The building Marco had retreated into exploded. The blast wave knocked Elena off her feet. Her ears rang. Smoke and fire billowed from where the structure had stood seconds ago. When the debris settled, Luca and his men were down. Not dead, moving, but wounded, disoriented. Marco emerged from a different building entirely. He'd never been in the one that exploded, just lured Luca there. He had a rifle now, moving toward where Luca struggled to stand. Elena didn't think. She ran. Across open ground, through smoke, past bodies and burning wreckage. Marco saw her coming, swung the rifle toward her. Elena fired first. Missed. Fired again. Hit him in the leg. Marco went down but didn't drop the rifle, brought it up toward her. Then Luca was there. Blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, limping but moving fast. He tackled Marco before the shot could fire. They hit the ground in a tangle of violence, fists, elbows, brutal close-quarters combat. Marco was bigger, stronger. But Luca was angrier. He drove his elbow into Marco's throat. Once, twice, until something crunched. Marco gasped, clawed at his crushed windpipe. Luca didn't stop. He grabbed Marco's head with both hands and twisted. The sound made Elena's stomach turn. Marco Castellano went limp. Luca stood slowly. Blood covered his hands, his face, his clothes. He looked at Elena like he was checking to make sure she was real. "You ran into gunfire," he said, voice rough. "You were about to die. I had it under control. You were on the ground. I've been in worse situations." Elena crossed to him, grabbed his face with both hands. "Shut up. Just shut up and let me save you for once." Luca pulled her close, kissed her hard enough to bruise. When he pulled back, his eyes held something she'd never seen before. Relief. "We need to move," one of his men called. "Police response will be here in minutes." The convoy evacuated fast. Left the dead behind. Abandoned vehicles. Evidence that would never lead anywhere because Luca owned half the city's law enforcement. Back at the safe house, medics treated the wounded. 3 of Luca's men had serious injuries. None fatal. Luca had a concussion, fractured ribs, and needed 17 stitches in his forehead. He refused painkillers. "Need to stay sharp," he said while the medic worked. "Still have cleanup to coordinate." Elena sat beside him, holding his hand. "It's over. Marco's dead. His organization isn't. They'll regroup, choose new leadership, come at us again. Then we'll deal with it then." She squeezed his hand. "Right now, just breathe." Luca looked at her. Really looked. "You saved my life today. You've saved mine a dozen times. That's different. I'm supposed to protect you. We protect each other now. That's how this works." Elena leaned closer. "I'm not the woman you married anymore. I'm not bait. I'm not a liability. I'm your partner. So stop treating me like something fragile that needs to be locked away. You almost died today. So did you. Welcome to our life." Luca almost laughed, then winced from the pain. "Our life. I like how that sounds." The medic finished stitching and left them alone. Luca pulled Elena onto the couch beside him despite the pain it caused. She settled against his good side carefully. "The 6 months are almost up," he said quietly. "Contract expires in 2 weeks." Elena's chest tightened. "I know. Do you still want out?" She thought about the woman who'd signed that contract, desperate, drowning, looking for any escape. That woman was gone. In her place sat someone who'd learned to shoot, to fight, to stand beside a mafia boss and refuse to back down. Someone who'd killed to protect the people she loved. Someone who'd discovered that surviving Luca's world meant becoming just as dangerous as he was. "No," Elena said. "I don't want out. Even knowing what this life costs, the violence, the constant threat, the fact that we'll always have enemies waiting for us to show weakness, even knowing all of that," she looked up at him. "Because the alternative is walking away from the only person who's ever made me feel this alive." Luca's hand tightened on her waist. "I love you. I've been trying not to, trying to keep this professional, but I can't anymore. I love you, and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because everyone I've ever loved has either betrayed me or died, and I can't survive losing you." Elena kissed him softly. "Then don't lose me. Keep me. Make this real." "It's already real." "Then make it permanent." Luca pulled back to look at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying tear up the contract. Stop calling this a business arrangement. Marry me again. For real this time. Not because you need a wife for appearances. Because you want me." "I do want you. More than I've ever wanted anything." "Then ask me." Luca stared at her for a long moment. Then he shifted despite the pain. Got down on one knee in front of her. Blood still stained his clothes. Stitches held his forehead together. He looked like he'd been through a war. He had been. They both had. "Elena Whitmore Devereaux," Luca said. "Will you stay married to me? Not for 6 months. Not for appearances. But for as long as we're both still breathing?" Tears burned Elena's eyes. "Yes." He kissed her. Tasted like copper and smoke and promises made in blood. When he pulled back, something had changed in his expression. The walls he'd built to survive his world had cracked wide enough to let her all the way in. "We need to get married again," he said. "Properly this time, not the spectacle. Just us. Making vows we actually mean." "When?" "Now. Tonight. Before anything else can go wrong." Elena laughed through tears. You want to get married while you're covered in blood and barely able to stand? I want to marry you before I lose my nerve, before the next threat comes, before anything else tries to tear us apart. Luca stood and pulled her up with him. I've spent my entire life building walls and making calculated decisions. For once, I want to do something impulsive, something real. You're delirious from blood loss. Probably. But I've never been more certain about anything. He made a phone call. Within an hour, a judge arrived. One of the few not on Luca's payroll, but who owed him enough favors to show up at midnight without questions. They stood in the living room of the safe house. No guests, no cameras, no performance. Just Luca and Elena and the truth between them. Do you have rings? The judge asked. Luca looked at the wedding band Elena still wore, then at his own hand. Empty. He'd never worn one during their contract marriage. He pulled off one of his leather gloves, revealed the tattoos covering his hand, then slid the matching band onto his finger. Now I do, he said. The judge performed a ceremony so simple it felt sacred. No elaborate vows, just the essential question. Do you take this person? I do, Luca said, like a promise, like a threat to anyone who tried to separate them. I do, Elena answered, like a choice she was making with full knowledge of what it cost. The judge pronounced them married, again, but this time it meant everything. Luca kissed his wife. Not for show, not for contracts or alliances or appearances, because he loved her, because she'd walked into his nightmare and refused to leave, because together they'd become something neither could be alone. When they pulled apart, Elena saw something in Luca's eyes she'd never seen before. Hope. What happens now? She asked. Now we finish this. Luca's expression hardened. Marco's dead, but the Castellano family still exists. They'll want revenge. So we don't wait for them to come to us. We go to them. We end them completely. Every lieutenant, every soldier, every connection they have. We burn their organization to the ground and salt the earth so nothing grows back. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. When? Tomorrow. I've already sent word to the other families. They can either help us or stay out of the way. But the Castellanos are done. And if they fight back... Luca's smile was all teeth. Then we remind Chicago why people fear the Devereaux name. The next morning, Luca assembled every resource he controlled. 50 armed men. Alliances with 3 other crime families who'd grown tired of Castellano aggression. Intelligence on every property, business, and safe house the family owned. It wasn't going to be a battle. It was going to be an execution. Elena stood beside Luca in the war room while he coordinated the operation. She wore tactical gear now, vest, weapons, no longer pretending to be anything except what she'd become, a woman who'd learned to fight back. You don't have to come, Luca said quietly. Yes, I do. They targeted my family. They tried to kill you. I'm not sitting this one out. It's going to be ugly. Everything about our life is ugly. That's not stopping me. Luca looked at her with something close to pride. Then stay close, follow my lead, and if I tell you to run, I run. I know. Elena checked her weapon. But I'm not running unless you are. Deal. The assault began at dawn. Simultaneous strikes across Chicago. Luca's forces hit every Castellano property at once. Warehouses, nightclubs, legitimate businesses that fronted illegal operations. Some locations surrendered immediately. Others fought back. Elena stayed with Luca's primary team. They hit the Castellano family's main compound, the place where Marco had planned his operations, where he'd ordered Elena's brother kidnapped. The gates came down under breaching charges. Luca's men poured through. Gunfire erupted, but it was brief. Overwhelming force crushed resistance fast. Inside, they found the family's remaining leadership. 3 men, Marco's cousins. They stood with their hands raised as Luca entered. You have a choice, Luca said calmly. Leave Chicago, tonight. Never come back. Or die where you stand. The oldest cousin spat at Luca's feet. Our family has been in this city for 3 generations. We're not running because some upstart thinks he owns the place. I don't think I own it. Luca's voice went cold. I know I do. Your family lost that privilege when you came after mine. You killed Marco. Marco killed himself the moment he touched my wife's family. Luca stepped closer. Now you have 10 seconds to decide. Run or die. The cousin reached for a weapon. Luca shot him before his hand closed around it. The other two cousins froze. Anyone else want to make that choice? Luca asked. They shook their heads. Then get out of my city. If I see any of you again, you won't get a warning. They ran. Luca turned to his men. Burn it, all of it, every building, every record, everything connected to the Castellano name. Elena watched the compound go up in flames, watched Luca's face illuminated by fire, watched him transform into exactly what his enemies feared most, a man willing to destroy everything to protect what he loved. By sunset, it was over. The Castellano family was scattered, their operations dismantled, their territory absorbed into Luca's empire. Chicago belonged to Devereaux completely. That night, Luca and Elena stood on the balcony of the penthouse watching the city glow beneath them. Smoke still rose from fires burning across the south side. It's done, Luca said quietly. They're finished. For now, Elena replied. Until the next threat, the next family that thinks they can take what's yours. What's ours? Luca pulled her close. You're part of this empire now. Equal partner, equal target. I know. Elena leaned against him. I'm ready. Are you? Because this is forever now. No contract expiration, no escape clause. Just us against everyone who wants to tear us down. I've never been more sure about anything. Luca kissed the top of her head. The woman who Googled how to marry a mafia boss had no idea what she was getting into. That woman doesn't exist anymore. No, she doesn't. Luca turned her to face him. Now there's just you. Elena Devereaux, the woman who walked into my nightmare and decided to stay, the woman who saved my life, the woman I love more than power or territory or anything else I've ever fought for. Elena touched his face. And there's you, Luca Devereaux, the monster who taught me to be dangerous, the man who protected my family, the husband I chose twice. They stood together watching their city, their empire, their kingdom built on violence and blood and the brutal calculus of survival. Tomorrow would bring new threats, new enemies, new battles to fight. But tonight, they had each other. And in Luca's world, that was the most dangerous weapon of all. Two people who loved each other enough to burn everything else down. The fires burned for 3 days. Chicago's south side smoldered beneath ash and smoke, while news helicopters circled overhead trying to piece together what had happened. The official story blamed gang violence, turf wars, the kind of chaos that erupted periodically in cities where organized crime still had roots. The truth was simpler. Luca Devereaux had erased an entire crime family from existence, and everyone who mattered knew it. Elena stood in the penthouse watching smoke rise against the dawn sky. She hadn't slept. Neither had Luca. They'd spent the night coordinating cleanup, managing law enforcement contacts, ensuring no evidence led back to them. By morning, it was done. The Castellano family was history. You should rest, Luca said from the doorway. He looked as exhausted as she felt. Stitches still held his forehead together. Dark circles carved shadows beneath his eyes. Can't! Elena didn't turn from the window. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. The warehouse, Marco, all of it. That doesn't go away. You just learn to live with it. How? Luca moved beside her. By remembering why you did it, who you protected, what you prevented. His hand found hers. You saved lives, Elena. Your brothers. Mine. Everyone connected to us who would have died if the Castellanos kept coming. I also helped destroy people. Burn their world down. They chose that world. They chose violence. We just responded in the only language they understood. Luca squeezed her hand. You can feel guilty if you need to, but don't regret surviving. Elena finally looked at him. Do you ever regret it? All of this? The empire you built on blood? Every day. But I'd build it again if it meant keeping you safe. They stood in silence, watching the city wake up beneath them. Somewhere out there, families mourned the Castellanos. Others celebrated their fall, and most people had no idea any of it had happened. That was how Luca's world worked. Invisible, efficient, brutal. Luca's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression darkened. What's wrong? Elena asked. Federal agents are requesting a meeting today. About what? Officially, to discuss the recent violence. Unofficially, to remind me they're still watching. Luca pocketed his phone. I need to handle this alone. No. Elena, I said no. I'm your wife, your partner. Whatever they have to say to you, they say to both of us. Luca studied her face, then nodded slowly. All right, but let me do the talking. The meeting took place at a restaurant Luca owned downtown. Private room. Swept for surveillance. The kind of place designed for conversations that never officially happened. 2 federal agents arrived exactly on time. A man and a woman, both wearing the same serious expression and tailored suits that screamed government salary. Mr. Devereaux? Mrs. Devereaux. The male agent extended his hand. Agent Harrison, this is Agent Chen. They shook hands, sat down at a table that felt more like an interrogation room despite the expensive wine list. Thank you for meeting with us, Agent Harrison began. We wanted to discuss the recent incidents involving the Castellano organization. Tragic, Luca said without emotion. Gang violence is always unfortunate. Is that what you're calling it? Agent Chen's eyes were sharp. Multiple coordinated attacks across the city. Millions in property damage. At least 15 confirmed deaths. I read the same reports you did. Terrible situation. Mr. Devereaux, we're not here to play games. Harrison leaned forward. We know you were involved. We know you orchestrated the systematic destruction of the Castellano family's operations. That's a serious accusation. Do you have evidence? Not enough to bring charges. Yet. Chen pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. But we're building a case. And when we have enough, we're coming for you. Luca didn't touch the tablet, just looked at it like it was something mildly interesting. Is there a point to this meeting beyond threats? The point is we're giving you an opportunity. Harrison's voice dropped. Work with us. Provide information on the other families. Help us dismantle organized crime in Chicago. In exchange, we offer protection, immunity. You want me to become an informant. We want you to do the right thing. Luca laughed, actually laughed. The right thing? You think there's a right thing in this world? We think there's a legal thing, and what you've been doing isn't it. Elena watched the exchange carefully, watched Luca's face remain perfectly calm while the agents tried to intimidate him. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Here's what's going to happen, Luca said quietly. You're going to leave this restaurant. You're going to continue your investigation. And you're going to find exactly what I allow you to find, which is nothing. We have resources. I have more. I have judges, politicians, law enforcement at every level who understand that Chicago functions better with me controlling the chaos than without me. Luca stood. So investigate all you want. Build your case. Waste taxpayer money chasing evidence that doesn't exist. But don't come into my restaurant and pretend you have leverage you don't. Agent Chen stood as well. This isn't over. It never is. Luca buttoned his jacket. But you'll find I'm very good at playing long games. The agents left. Elena waited until they were gone before speaking. They'll keep coming after you. Let them. I've survived worse than federal investigations. For how long? How long before they find something? Before someone talks? Luca's jaw tightened. As long as it takes. I'm not giving up everything I've built because they want to feel useful. Maybe you should. He looked at her sharply. What? Maybe you should give them something. Not everything, but enough to make them back off. Elena moved closer. You destroyed the Castellanos. You proved your point. Now maybe it's time to step back. Go legitimate. Use your empire for something that doesn't require burning buildings and killing people. You want me to go soft. I want you to survive. To live past 40 without a bullet in your head or a cell at a federal prison. Her voice cracked. I want us to have a future that isn't constantly running from the next threat. Luca stared at her for a long moment. You're serious? Completely. You said you loved me more than power or territory. Prove it. Walk away from the parts of this that will destroy you eventually. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You choose. Right now. Keep fighting wars until one of them kills you, or build something that lasts. The words hung between them. Luca walked to the window overlooking Chicago, the city he controlled, the empire he'd built through violence and fear and calculated brutality. My father told me something before he died, Luca said quietly. He said the problem with empires built on blood is they always demand more blood. You can't stop feeding the beast. The moment you show weakness, the moment you try to walk away, someone moves in to take what's yours. So you kill them too, then the next person, then the next. When does it end? It doesn't. That's the point. He turned back to her. There is no retirement in my world. There's just power until someone takes it from you. Then change the world. Make new rules. Be the first one to walk away and survive it. Luca's expression softened. You really believe that's possible? I believe you're smart enough to make it possible. I believe you've built enough legitimate businesses to transition out of the illegal ones. And I believe if anyone can break the cycle, it's you. He crossed the room and pulled her close. You're asking me to give up everything that made me who I am. I'm asking you to become someone better, someone our children won't be afraid to know. Luca went very still. Children? Elena's hand moved to her stomach. I'm pregnant. Found out this morning. The world stopped. Luca stared at her like she'd just rewritten reality. You're serious? About 10 weeks. Must have happened right after the wedding. Elena's eyes searched his face. So now you need to decide. What kind of father do you want to be? The monster who rules through fear, or the man who built something his child can be proud of? Luca's hand shook as they touched her face. A baby. Our baby. I don't know how to be a father. My own was a nightmare. I swore I'd never. Then be different. Be better. Show our child that people can change, that you changed. Elena covered his hands with hers. But you have to actually change, Luca. Not just say it, not just go halfway. You have to commit to building a life that doesn't end in violence. He kissed her, desperate, terrified, like she was the only solid thing in a world that had just shifted beneath his feet. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll do it. I'll walk away from the criminal empire, transition everything legitimate, give the feds enough to make them think they won without actually destroying what I've built. You mean it? I've never meant anything more. Luca's hand moved to her stomach. I want our child to know me as something other than a monster. I want to be the man you see when you look at me, not the one everyone else fears. Elena felt tears spill over. You're already that man. You've been him since the night you offered me the contract. You just hide him behind the monster. Then I'll stop hiding. The transition took 6 months. Luca dismantled his criminal operations with the same precision he'd used to build them, sold off illegal businesses to other families, transferred territory through carefully negotiated agreements, converted money laundering operations into legitimate financial services. The other crime families watched with suspicion. Some saw opportunity, others saw weakness. Luca eliminated the ones who came after him, but he did it quietly, efficiently, using lawyers and financial pressure instead of bullets and fire. The man who'd once ruled through fear learned to rule through influence. It wasn't easy. There were nights Luca paced the penthouse like a caged animal. Nights he stared at his phone, fighting the urge to handle problems the old way. Nights he woke sweating from nightmares about losing control. Elena stayed beside him through all of it, reminded him why he was changing, what he was building toward. And slowly, the man everyone feared as Chicago's most dangerous mafia boss transformed into something else. A legitimate businessman with a violent past he was trying to outrun. The federal investigation continued, but with nothing concrete to pursue, it eventually stalled. Agent Harrison and Agent Chen moved on to other cases. Other criminals who hadn't learned to operate in the gray areas between legal and illegal. Luca's empire survived, different, cleaner, but still powerful. Elena's pregnancy progressed through the transition. She watched her body change while Luca's world changed around them, felt their child grow while her husband grew into someone new. The woman who'd once Googled how to marry a mafia boss was having that mafia boss's baby. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt right. 8 months after the Castellano War ended, Elena went into labor at 3 a.m. Luca drove her to the hospital, breaking every traffic law, held her hand through contractions that made her scream. I hate you, Elena gasped between pushes. I know, Luca said calmly. This is your fault. Completely my fault. I'm never doing this again. Whatever you say. Stop being so calm. I'm in agony, and you're just standing there. I love you, Luca interrupted. And you're the strongest person I've ever met. And you're about to give me something I never thought I deserved. Elena's anger melted. You deserve everything. I deserve you. Everything else is a bonus. Their daughter was born 40 minutes later. Small. Perfect. With dark hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much already, even though she was minutes old. The nurse placed her in Elena's arms. Luca stood frozen, staring at this tiny human they'd created, this life that depended on them completely. She's beautiful, he whispered. She's perfect. Elena looked up at him. Do you want to hold her? I don't know how. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. Luca carefully took his daughter, cradled her against his chest like she was made of glass. The tattooed hands that had killed so many people now held new life with infinite gentleness. Hey there, he said softly. I'm your dad, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I promise you this. I will protect you from everything, including myself if I have to. The baby made a small sound. Luca smiled, actually smiled, not the cold expression he used for business. Something real. What should we name her? Elena asked. Something that means hope, or new beginning, something that reminds me every day why I changed. They settled on Sofia Devereaux, the daughter of Chicago's former most feared Mafia boss, and the woman who'd saved him from himself. The first month was chaos, sleepless nights, endless crying, learning to be parents while still figuring out how to be married for real. But Luca adapted. The man who'd survived gang wars and federal investigations learned to change diapers and warm bottles. Paced the penthouse at 2 a.m. with Sofia against his shoulder singing off-key lullabies. Elena watched him transform completely. The monster was gone. In his place was just a man trying his best to be good enough for his family. On Sofia's 6-month birthday, Luca made an announcement. I'm starting a foundation, he told Elena over dinner while their daughter slept nearby. Using the money from the legitimate businesses. It'll help families dealing with medical debt, student loans, the kind of crushing financial problems that destroy lives. Elena's breath caught. Like the problems I had when we met. Exactly like those problems. No one should have to marry a stranger to save their family. Luca reached across the table for her hand. I can't undo the past. Can't bring back the people I've hurt. But I can make sure other people don't end up desperate enough to make the choices you had to make. You're going to help people. I'm going to try. It won't erase what I've done, but maybe it'll balance the scales a little. Elena squeezed his hand. My brother got his surgery because of you. My mother has a house because of you. I have a life because of you. You've already helped people, Luca. Now you're just helping more. I want Sofia to be proud of me someday. When she's old enough to understand who I was, I want to show her who I became. She'll be proud. I promise. The foundation launched 3 months later. The Devereaux Family Foundation. Focused on debt relief, medical assistance, and educational opportunities for families in crisis. The initial funding came from Luca's legitimate business profits. Millions of dollars directed toward helping people instead of controlling them. Chicago noticed. The press coverage was overwhelmingly positive. The man once whispered about as a criminal kingpin was now being praised as a philanthropist. People lined up for assistance, families were saved from bankruptcy and homelessness. And slowly, Luca's reputation transformed. Still powerful, still wealthy. Still not someone you wanted as an enemy, but no longer purely feared. Now he was respected. Elena watched it happen with pride, watched her husband become the man she'd always known he could be. 1 year after Sofia's birth, Luca's mother came to visit. Victoria Devereaux walked into the penthouse looking every bit the matriarch she'd always been. Cold, elegant, terrifying. But when she saw Sofia, something cracked. May I? Victoria asked. Elena handed over her daughter. Victoria held Sofia with surprising gentleness, studied her granddaughter's face. She has your eyes, Luca. Your father's eyes. Don't, Luca said quietly. Don't what? Don't compare her to him. She's nothing like him. She's going to grow up knowing love instead of fear. Victoria looked at her son. You've changed. Yes. Because of her. Victoria nodded toward Elena. The woman I thought would destroy you actually saved you. I told you she would, Elena said. Victoria almost smiled. Yes, you did. I should have listened. She looked back at Sophia. What you're building with the foundation, what you're doing to legitimize the family business. Your father would have hated it. Good. But I'm proud of you. Victoria's voice softened. You broke the cycle. You became something he never could, a man worthy of being loved. Luca's jaw tightened. I'm trying. You're succeeding. Victoria handed Sophia back to Elena. Take care of them. They're the best thing that ever happened to this family. She left without another word. Luca stood staring at the door. My mother just said she was proud of me. She's right to be. I don't know how to process that, Elena laughed. Welcome to having a functional family relationship. It's weird at first. That night, after Sophia was asleep, Luca pulled out a folder from his office safe. The original marriage contract, the 6-month agreement that had started everything. He handed it to Elena. What am I supposed to do with this? She asked. Whatever you want. Burn it, frame it, throw it away. Luca sat beside her. I kept it as a reminder, but I don't need reminders anymore. I know exactly who you are and what you mean to me. Elena opened the folder, saw her signature from 2 years ago. Young, desperate, terrified. That woman felt like a stranger now. Should we renew our vows? She asked. Make it official that we're choosing this instead of it being forced? We already did that, remember? The night we got married for real. That was in a safe house with you bleeding and delirious. Luca smiled. Best wedding I've ever had. We could do it properly. Invite our families. Make it a celebration instead of a survival tactic. You want a wedding? I want to show the world that we chose each other, that this isn't a contract or an arrangement. It's real. Luca kissed her softly. Then let's do it. Let's get married for the 3rd time and make it the kind of wedding you actually deserve. The wedding took place 6 months later in the same cathedral where they'd first married, but everything else was different. Sunlight streamed through stained glass instead of rain hammering the windows. Friends and family filled the pews instead of crime bosses and armed guards. Elena's mother walked her down the aisle, while her brother stood as one of Luca's groomsmen. Sophia sat in the front row wearing a tiny dress and making baby sounds. When Elena reached the altar, Luca looked at her the same way he had during their first wedding, like she was everything. But this time, the fear was gone, replaced by certainty. The ceremony was simple, traditional, no performances or spectacles, just 2 people making promises they actually meant. I take you, Luca said, not because I need you for business or appearances or survival, but because I love you, because you saw the worst parts of me and chose to stay anyway, because you gave me a daughter who reminds me every day why it's worth being better. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I take you, not because you saved me from debt or danger, but because you showed me I was stronger than I thought, because you let me into your nightmare and trusted me to help you find the way out, because you're the best man I know even though you started as the scariest. They exchanged new rings, simple bands engraved with the date they'd first met. The night Elena had Googled those fateful words, the officiant pronounced them married, for the 3rd time. But this time it was perfect. Luca kissed his wife while their daughter made happy sounds and their families applauded and Chicago glowed in the windows behind them. When they pulled apart, Elena whispered, "We made it." "We did," Luca whispered back. "Against every odd, through every nightmare, we actually made it." The reception was everything their first wedding hadn't been. Laughter, dancing, joy instead of tension. Luca held Sophia while Elena danced with her brother. Watched his family celebrate instead of calculate. Felt something he'd never experienced before. Peace. Later that night, back in the penthouse with Sophia asleep in her nursery, Luca and Elena stood on the balcony watching Chicago sleep beneath them. Do you ever miss it? Elena asked. The power? The control? Being feared? Luca considered the question. Sometimes, late at night when something goes wrong and I have to handle it the legal way instead of the efficient way. He looked at her. But then I remember what I have now, what I'd lose if I went back, and it's not even close. What do you have now? You, Sophia.
A life that doesn't require constant violence to maintain. The ability to sleep without wondering if someone's going to try to kill me. He pulled her close. I gave up an empire built on fear, but I gained a kingdom built on love. Best trade I ever made. Anna leaned against him. What happens next? After we've been married long enough that people forget how it started?
We live. We raise our daughter. We build the foundation bigger. We prove that people can change if they have a good enough reason. And if the past catches up, if someone comes looking for the old Luca Devereaux, then I handle it, but differently than before, smarter, without burning everything down. Luca's arms tightened around her. I'm not that man anymore. I can't be. Not for Sophia, not for you, not even for myself. They stood in silence, watching their city. 5 years passed. The Devereaux Family Foundation grew into one of the largest charitable organizations in the Midwest. Hundreds of families received help. Thousands of lives changed. Luca's legitimate business empire expanded. Clean money, legal operations. The kind of success that didn't require anyone to die. Sophia grew into a bright, fearless little girl who had her father wrapped around her finger. She'd sit in his lap during foundation meetings, asking questions about why people needed help and how they could help more. Elena went back to school, got her MBA, became co-director of the foundation alongside Luca. Together they built something that mattered. The federal investigation officially closed with no charges filed. Agents Harrison and Chen moved to other cases. The whispers about Luca's criminal past faded into rumors no one could prove. Chicago moved on. But Luca and Elena never forgot where they'd come from. On the anniversary of the night Elena had first Googled how to marry a Mafia boss, they sat in the same penthouse office where Luca had first offered her the contract. Sophia was asleep. The city glowed beneath them, everything quiet and perfect. I was thinking, Elena said, about that night, about how desperate I was, how insane the whole thing was. Regretting it? Luca asked with a slight smile. Not even a little, but I keep thinking about all the women out there right now who are just as desperate as I was, who might make choices they'll regret because they can't see another way out. What are you suggesting? I want to expand this foundation, focus specifically on women in crisis, women dealing with debt, abuse, impossible situations. Give them options that don't require marrying strangers or selling themselves or staying in dangerous relationships. Luca studied her face. You want to save other women from becoming you. I want to save them from needing to become me, from having to make that choice at all. Then let's do it. Whatever you need, whatever resources, we'll build it. Elena kissed him. Have I mentioned I love you? Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry. I love you, even though you're still occasionally terrifying. I'm your husband. It's my job to be occasionally terrifying. Keeps things interesting. They laughed. Real laughter. The kind that came from being genuinely happy instead of just surviving. Later that night, Elena found the old contract buried in a desk drawer. The paper yellowed slightly, her signature still visible. A relic from another lifetime. She carried it to the fireplace and held it over the flames. Are you sure? Luca asked from the doorway. Completely. This was never us. It was just how we started. Elena dropped the contract into the fire. Now we get to be something better. They watched it burn. When the last piece of paper turned to ash, Luca pulled Elena close and kissed the top of her head. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For Googling that stupid question, for signing my contract, for seeing something in me worth saving. His voice caught. For giving me a life I never thought I deserved. You deserved it all along. You just needed someone to show you. I needed you. You have me, for as long as we're both still breathing, just like you promised. They stood together in front of the dying fire. Husband and wife. Partners. Parents. Two people who'd started with a desperate Google search and a cold business arrangement. Two people who'd survived violence, betrayal, federal investigations, and their own worst instincts. Two people who'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let someone love you, and sometimes that danger is worth it. Outside, Chicago slept beneath its blanket of lights. The city they'd fought for. The empire they'd transformed. The kingdom they now ruled together not through fear, but through something far more powerful. Love that had survived everything. Sophia stirred in her nursery down the hall. Elena went to check on her while Luca stayed by the fire. He thought about the man he'd been, the monster everyone feared, the criminal kingpin willing to destroy anything that threatened his power. That man was dead. In his place stood someone new, someone better. Someone who'd learned that real strength wasn't about how much fear you could inspire, but how much love you could protect. Elena returned and slipped her hand into his. "She's asleep," Elena said softly. "Good. What are you thinking about?" "How 5 years ago I was sitting in this exact spot, planning how to maintain an empire built on blood. And now I'm standing here planning how to expand a foundation built on hope." Luca looked at her. "You did that. You changed everything." "We changed everything. Together." "Together," Luca agreed. They walked to the balcony, stood beneath the stars, looking out at the city that had nearly destroyed them both. "Do you think she'll understand someday?" Luca asked. "Sophia, when she's old enough to know the truth about how we met, about who I was. I think she'll understand that people are complicated, that her father was broken and found a way to heal. That love doesn't mean someone's perfect. It means you choose them anyway. You make it sound simple. It is simple. We choose each other every day, through every challenge. That's all marriage ever is." Luca pulled her close. "Then I choose you. Again. For the 1,000th time. And I choose you. The monster who became a man. The mafia boss who became my husband. The criminal kingpin who became the best father I've ever seen." They kissed beneath Chicago's sky, and somewhere in the darkness, the ghosts of who they'd been watched the people they'd become and finally let go. The woman who'd Googled how to marry a mafia boss out of desperation. The man who'd offered her a contract to solve his own problems. Those people were gone. In their place stood Elena and Luca Devereaux. Husband and wife, partners in every sense, parents to a daughter who would grow up knowing love instead of fear, founders of an organization that saved lives instead of destroying them, and proof that even the darkest stories could find light if two people were brave enough to rewrite the ending together. Years later, when Sophia was old enough to ask about how her parents met, Elena would tell her the truth, about the desperate Google search, about the contract, about the 6 months that were supposed to end with them walking away from each other, and about how sometimes the most impossible beginnings led to the most beautiful endings. "So you really Googled how to marry a mafia boss?" Sophia would ask, eyes wide. "I really did," Elena would confirm. "And Daddy was really a mafia boss?" "He was a lot of things, some of them bad, but he became someone good, someone worth loving." "Because of you?" "Because of us. Because we chose to save each other instead of destroying each other." Sophia would think about this, then ask the most important question of all. If you could go back to that night, knowing everything that would happen, would you still search for that answer? Elena would look at Luca, at the man who'd been a monster and chose to become human, at her husband, her partner, the father of her child, and she would smile. "Every single time," she would say, "I'd search for it every single time." Because some questions, no matter how desperate or impossible they seem, lead to exactly the answers you need. And some mafia bosses, no matter how dangerous they start, become exactly the men worth marrying. Not for contracts or money or survival, but for love. Real, complicated, hard-won love that changes everything. The kind of love that turns nightmares into dreams, and Google searches into happily ever afters.